Good morning, scholars. I'm here. I'm ready to do this awesome and amazing presentation on Monroe's motivated sequence. It's 9 a.m., so I'm going to go ahead and get started because I want to make the most of this time. And hopefully one or two of you will join me. And I won't just be speaking into the camera. But if I am, that's totally okay too. So let's go ahead and just jumped right in. Monroe's motivated sequence. We are coming up to concept demonstration number 4. And this is your final concept demonstration speech. And so it's a little bit more in depth than some of the other methods that we have been introduced to. And what I love about Monroe's motivated sequence is each step is already laid out for you. So you can use that as a basic guideline and simply fill in the blanks, bullet pointing what your major arguments are for that section, how you want to frame the particular story for that section, inserting your evidence so that you know where you want to cite it, and then speak from that outline in a very extemporaneous conversational way. So Monroe's motivated sequence is a really awesome tool for you to just use as a guideline for your final speech. And what I hope that it does is that it provides relevance and significance, which are the two themes of this week's conversation. So without further ado, I am going to just get right on into the business. Some things you should know about Monroe's motivated sequence. The method was actually developed by a former professor at Purdue University, Alan Monroe. And Dr. Monroe developed a persuasive speaking pattern that was designed to actuate behavior. So the thing that you need to understand about persuasion is that we want it to be action-oriented. There needs to be a call to action that your audience can actually put into action. I said action like 6 times, but that's the ultimate goal of this. You want to do it. This reminds me of a statement by E. Patrick Johnson, another communication scholar. He writes, "A knowing made manifest by doing." And that's been one of my favorite phrases when I teach performance and when I teach public speaking, because it really is about the doing that gets you jump started and lets your juices get flowing, if you will. So the theory itself developed is a modified form of problem solution. We're working on problem solution right now, so that's pretty exciting. And this is a much more in-depth version of it. So a couple of assumptions. The theory assumes that in order to move people to act, you actually need to motivate them. And in order to motivate them, you do this by providing emotional and logical reasoning. So both our IQ and our EQ. How do we do this? From the very start, just like any speech, you have to gain your audience's attention. And you really want to draw it to the speech topic, right? So grab their attention, hook them, use quotations or song lyrics. Start with a testimonial that you were able to pull out of your research, somebody's personal narrative. Maybe it's your personal narrative. If it is your personal narrative and you use that to grab people's attention, make sure that you just don't make this speech all about you, but that you focus it on the underlying topic that is related to your passion, okay? So first step, make sure that you have your attention. From here, you're going to want to make sure that your audience understands the need to understand this problem. And there are 4 elements to help you establish the need. First, you need to make a statement. Just tell us what the nature of the problem is. We've been doing this in our opinion section of the Pop-It method pretty nicely. And you can also think about this as just being a purpose statement, like this is the nature of the problem. What's the illustration? This is basically breaking it down so that we can visualize or understand what it is that you're talking about. Give us a couple of details that help us understand what the problem is. And then provide us some ramifications. So additional support, such as statistics or testimony that helps to show the overall extent of the problem. And then finally, pointing directly to the relationship between the audience and the problem. So your audience wants to know, like, how is this going to impact them? And before you leave step 2, you're going to want to make sure that they have that understanding. Also, what are the personal implications for each listener? So we talked earlier in the semester about how your audience might be pretty diverse. They might all belong to one specific group that has asked you to come and speak, but they each come in with their own particular demographics, their own social locations, their own identity markers. So how might each one of those audience members see themselves related to the overall problem? Once you have established the need, you can begin to unpack the satisfaction, right? So after you've demonstrated the problem, you've shown how extensive it is, you've discussed how it will affect your audience, now you need to propose a solution. This is how we're going to satisfy that problem. This is how we're going to fix it, right? This is how we're going to satisfy the need that we've created through the problem. And this step can have as many as 5 parts. So the first part would be a statement where you briefly state the attitude, the belief, or the action that you want the audience to adopt. So if you want them to feel pride, or if you want them to feel anger, or if you actually want them to donate $5, this is where you actually state that out loud. Then provide a couple of sentences that help to explain why your proposal is useful. And this is where some visual aids might be useful. You don't need visual aids, per se in our speeches, but a lot of you have been doing a really great job with storytelling and using objects, like if you're doing a recipe, showing how this particular tool works best. And so that type of visual aid might be useful as a part of your explanation to help really drive home the point that that your audience can understand what the overall action or attitude or belief that you want them to adopt. Then you might want to have a theoretical demonstration. So this is where you show the logical connection between the need and your solution. So here's the problem, and then here's your solution, and what's the theoretical demonstration that you can draw between that. Your audience is also going to want to have some practical facts and some figures and testimonies that help to show that your proposal is actually effective. You can't just say, oh, this is going to be the best method to fix the problem, and then you don't have examples that show this is what's fixed the problem in the past, right? So for instance, maybe you're interested in making the best smoothies that are out there, and the blender that you have is really not so great. And you have the option of going between a Ninja or a Bullet, right? And so here's where you're actually going to want to have testimonials to say, listen, I bought my Ninja 5 years ago on sale at Costco, true story, and it's been the best thing ever. Here's the things that it's done for me, and by the way, here are some other testimonials from people in the community who also use Ninja, who speak to why it's the best product on the market, right? So have some practical kind of like facts and figures to help back up your information. This is where good evidence really comes in handy. And then E, meeting the objective. So here you want to show that your proposal can overcome any of the objections that your audience or your listeners might have. Right? So it is perfectly okay to see the arguments or the other side of the debate, if you will, and to incorporate that within your speech, so long as you counter that with why your solution is still the best solution out there. Step 4 is visualization. And this is something that's new to all of the patterns that we have out there. It's pretty unique in that it asks the audience to imagine what will happen if they take action or if they don't take action. And you can do this in 3 different ways. One, you can describe future conditions, right? So this is what the world will be like after we put this plan into action. This is how the organization will operate after we put this plan into action. This is where you paint a realistic scenario. So you tell them how they're going to enjoy the outcomes of the solution, how now your work week is going to be 35 hours instead of 40 hours, how now you'll have 3 weeks of vacation throughout the year instead of having 2 weeks of vacation. They're all positive. They appeal to pathos. They have check-marked aspects of safety, what pride is, pleasure, clicking into the emotional responses that people are like drawn to. This also works in the negative perspective. So just like you can have audiences imagine the future positive outcomes, you can also ask them to think about the unpleasant situations if they don't take action. So what's going to happen if they don't put this policy into action? What's going to continue to be a burden on them? How are they going to be challenged? And how are things going to be bogged down and stagnant? This is where you really highlight the negative aspects that encourage them to take action so they don't actually stay in that stagnant, awful place that you just painted for them. Another way to do this is to both compare the positive and the negative results. So here's what could happen if you do the plan of action. Here's what could happen if you don't do the plan of action. And then basically saying, which one do you really want as your outcome? The visualization stage is really important, and it's also a really good way for you to build credibility with your audience so that the stories that you tell, the metaphors that you use to help them visualize and detail what motivates them to take action, that's really important. That's going to be the clicker to see if they actually step into step 5. Step 5 is the call to action. This is where you very specifically, overtly, out loud state, I want you to donate $5 at the end of this webinar. Click down below and go to the link that allows you to buy this particular product. Or cast your vote here on May 1st, 2019. Go to this location. This is the very overt call to action that you know whether or not people are actually participating or buying into your persuasive platform. And then you can also state your personal intent to act. Not only am I going to encourage you to do this, but I'll be there waiting for you to collect your ballot at the station. So you're going to actually be invested in it. And you show to your listeners and you show to your audience members that if I can do it, you can do it too. And then end with impact. And you know I like to go right back to the top to that lovely little hook that you use to grab their attention. If you go back to that narrative or you go back to those statistics, it really helps the speech feel as if it's full circle. So Alan Monroe did a really awesome job of just kind of bullet pointing the major sections of how this type of persuasive speech can motivate people into action. And what I would like you all to take away from this is how can I get people to move in a particular direction? So your speeches, yes, they can be personally a part of your passions, but they should also be connected to the larger social issues that are out there. Think about what type of political issues are at play or cultural issues or types of advice that you would like to give other people in your community. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you're like, listen, before you become a stay-at-home mom, these are the things that you need to think about. Or if you are a stay-at-home mom, here's how you can stay connected. Think about how you can get people to move in a particular direction by kind of tapping into their values and tapping into that kind of emotional and logical aspect of those things. All right, so use it as a guideline. I love it. I actually use it a lot in my presentations. I think it's exceptionally useful, and so I hope that you all will find it useful as well. I think it's going to be a cool tool to use as we round out the concept demonstration speeches and kind of, oh my goodness, step into the end of the semester. So I notice I have a couple of folks here, so I'm going to stop sharing and just see who joined me and ask if there are any questions along the way. Hey, Isabel, so good to see you again. And Khadijah, welcome back. I'm glad to see you again. All right, let me see here. Step out on my full screen because that was still full. So I'll go ahead and just unmute folks here. Say my hellos, and then I'm going to also stop the recording just so that our conversation isn't necessarily given out to everybody in the class. So there we go.